Hello, Gina. Thank you so much for joining us on the Everyday Mystic. It is beautiful to see you.
Likewise, it's thank you so much for having me. I love the name of your podcast so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was just saying before we
It
started
just
recording,
speaks
right?
volumes about what it is, what it's about, right?
Yeah,
It's like we can be with the mystery every single day.
exactly. You get it. Yes, it's exactly what it is. It has a lot of meanings for me. Like that is one of them. And then the other is
Mhm,
that we are all mystics and we all have that capability, and the uh the everyday aspect is kind of to just bring it down to, you don't have to go off into the uh into this 30-year or lifelong training in the mountains away from everybody in order to connect to that mystic nature that it's just available for us. And then also just the everyday practices, the things that we do
mhm,
to connect to the divine on an everyday basis. So it
mhm.
has so many meanings for me. I'm really happy to hear it speaks to you, because it
Yeah,
did. It came through really divine guidance. Once I decided, yes, I'm going to do a podcast. Finally, here we go. It channeled right in and lit me up. So I was happy to put it out there, and I'm happy to hear that it resonates with you.
yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. I love all the things that come to us through that divine guidance and
Yeah.
where it just feels so yummy in your body and where it feels so expansive and inspiring and like almost like giddy, like a little girl giddiness, right? Like when you're like, and it's like that level of excitement, like the level of excitement. I always think about it that I don't know if you remember the movie Knocked Up, where they were talking about how kids go ape shit for bubbles, like
I
nothing.
never saw that movie.
Okay, so there's a
Yeah.
scene where the little girls they're chasing bubbles
Yeah.
from a bubble gun or yeah, and they're talking about how like the level of joy that kids get from chasing bubbles or from being around bubbles, like if adults could have like 1/10 of that joy,
Hmm.
that would be incredible. It would be a huge win. So for me it's like that level of inspiration when you're like kind of like I call it going ape shit for bubbles. It's like ah, yes! Like, literally, like, the little kid in you is so excited and so inspired and so just, beyond
Hmm.
joy. Yeah.
Yes, and you feel it throughout your
Mhm,
whole
mhm,
being. It's not just something that is like, because you can get the inspiration of an idea, right? You can get like, "Ooh,
mhm.
I got a good idea." But when it's something that is this divine spark, you feel it everywhere. It lights up the entire being on all of these different energetic realms, right? So it is a very big experience versus just like, oh, I got an idea, or I have this feeling, this notion. Now, those little feelings, notions, whispers are also kind of steps, aren't they, towards that bigger moment, I think.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, you're a pleasure and embodiment guide. So you obviously help people get into this place of embodying the divine,
Mhm.
embodying pleasure, embodying the bigger, wider, fuller experience. How did you get into this? And what guided you to this work?
Yeah. Long journey to and much more ahead as well. But I first so my son was 2 years old and his dad and I were getting, at that moment separated. And we were in constant, like struggle, conflict, misunderstanding, like continuously in this way of like, how is it that we're just like kind of like speaking two different languages? And I really started when we split up, I really started diving into like how do I not know how to do this thing, relationship, right? How do I not know how to do partnership? How do I have zero foundational knowledge, or like actual knowledge of how to interact with this other human being that I've lived with for, at that point, I don't know, 10 years maybe, or something like that, right? And the like my first steps were, I started studying Vedas, Vedic
Mm.
sciences, with my two favorite teachers. They're Ukrainian men, and they're just brilliant and funny. And so I love diving deep, and I am, you know, a transformation junkie, and I really just love transformation, and I really love learning, and I really love like these aha moments and being in the process. And so, like, hundreds of hours of being with the Vedas, which a lot of the things that they talked about was how do we apply this beautiful ancient knowledge to today's like relationships and marriages, and you know, merging the divide between the genders, and all of like a different word for polarity paradigms, like how do we create polarity, how do we do all of these things, and how do you show up as the embodied feminine person in your relationship. um so that was my first step, and it just completely opened up this world of completely different relating
Mm.
that is, I have a feeling you're familiar with this, where there's a new knowledge that comes in, and it's almost like, oh, yeah, I've always, like, that makes sense. Like, it's already something in me. Like, it's something that I resonate so deeply with that it's kind of like as if I already knew it,
Mhm.
but I've completely forgot it. And I was just reminded about it. That's
Mhm.
what it felt like. I was like, yeah, yes, 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 full bodied yes to all of this. And then I found David Data and all of that paradigm of polarity and those teachings. And that was really like, from that point, it just went to all of these different other disciplines and teachings that were very much about polarity and very much about how do you embody your divine feminine essence? How do you cultivate your feminine qualities? And I've danced, so I dance five rhythms and similar kind of non choreographed movement practices for the past 20 plus years. So a lot of my, like, the teachings that are like lectures and very cerebral and very like um in the head and learning and like, hmm, were processed through the body and
Mm.
processed through the sensory system, because I would learn these things and I would go and I would dance with them and I would bring them on the dance floor, and I would bring a lot of grief of how did I not find this before? How did I not know this before? How could I not have, I could have saved my marriage. I could have showed up as a completely different person if I just knew these things.
Mm.
And knowing them is beautiful. And I think it's really amazing that you know and that you have the foundational piece. But moving with them and internalizing them and embodying them really is an entirely different thing. And it's a lifelong process. And it's very funny when you first start doing it and you're like, I'm this embodied being now, I have the knowledge and I have the practice, and now I'm like, this. And I remember over the course of years, like my teacher that I've danced with for, like I said, 20 plus years, she would come to me and we'd have conversations. She's like, oh, I see that you're moving differently, like in with more freedom in this way. Or
Mm.
I see that I would, like, when I first started my movement practice, I would dance on my tippy toes. Right. So I was so not grounded. I was so like up there with
Mhm.
my thoughts and my ideas. And just like the way to get into the body, the way to connect to the earth, and connecting all of these foundational pieces with that practice, and moving all of the things that you know and understand and realize intellectually through the sensory system and through your body, and finding like different ways, non-linear, very feminine ways to move with it.
Mhm. Mm.
It's been really life changing. And I really don't know how I would have gotten through my divorce if it wasn't for those practices. Because I would come to we danced in a church, in a little church. That was our space that we happened to dance in. So I would come to the church and I would dance for 2 hours and I would weep, like
Mm,
really, like let the tears, like completely like wet t-shirts, run through me. And it was such a beautiful, safe space with community to be in, that complete raw,
yeah,
vulnerable, like fully expressed, fully authentic space. So while it was like literally, I was like completely changing who I was in this
that's
process.
so beautiful. Oh, I mean, we are not in this, in our culture here in the United States, we don't have as much, I think dance is relegated to, certain groups of people. It's just like, oh, you're trying to be a professional, or you are, going to the clubs and, but it's like dancing is not as integral to our culture here, of where it's so free, where people might just at a cafe get up and just like start moving. And, people are a little bit more as a group, as a whole. And yes, we are varied and diverse here, but just as a culture, a little bit more reserved, I think, when it comes to dancing, just based on having traveled to, many other countries and experiencing other cultures. Now, even here, when you go into a subculture of, immigrants that have moved here, and even them, right? So much more like quick to get up and dance and just like, come on, let's go, let's move. And, um, but your like typical American can be really kind of rigid in that. And dance is such an incredible, I mean, so ancient, right? Just moving to the rhythms of the earth, and then eventually instruments that got brought in, and then eventually song, right? The singing and song and moving to that.
Mhm.
So ancient and so integral to embodiment, as you said, to our health overall, to move out, dance out disease, right? To
100%.
dance out, these spirits of illness and things like that. I mean, there's so much ancient evidence of this, and I just love that you did that and applied this Vedic knowledge through you, not just into you, but through you, and allowed it to transform you. That's so beautiful. Now, do you take those dance practices? Is it part of the work that you would do, like with a
Mhm.
client? Do you have them do movement and dance?
Absolutely. It's like an integral part of the work that I do. Absolutely movement all the way, because I just, like you said, like people are not really prone to doing that. And yesterday I shared with you that I'm at a water park hotel, like with kids. And I was standing in the lobby waiting to check in. And, as an everyday mystic, that we kind of like just look around and we notice the collective field and we feel into it. And I'm like, oh, okay, like this is a very interesting field. And if I could describe it in one word, like all of the people that were in the lobby, again, it's a generalization. And I'm sure there's many different people with different ways of life and the way that they are in the world. But as a collective feel that I felt, it was very disembodied. It was very like everyone was like from here up, right? Like there was just no weight, right? And in Hara is like our like solar plexus, like our belly area, like where we hold ourselves, like that, strength, that groundedness. Like I felt like everyone was kind of floating, and just noticing, like looking around and feeling like, okay, like we're floating. We're in the head. We're here, like on our devices, like getting, unlimited dopamine hits, right? We're not needing to go and actually create real dopamine. We're not needing to go and work in the field. We're not needing to move our body really, barely at all, right? So it's only by choice that if we decide as an intentional practice to move our body, that we are
Mhm.
able to move our grief, our joy, our excitement, our pain, our fear, all of these different, like, multitude variety of emotions. It
Yeah.
needs to move through your body. It needs to move through your sensory system. It doesn't happen in the head, right? It
Mhm.
happens everywhere. So just looking around and noticing, like, wow, like we're as a culture, we're just so disconnected
Mhm.
from our body. And I noticed that people, often women in particular, I think men as well. I work with women, so I'm more intimately familiar with their process. But it's like you view your body as something almost outside of yourself,
Mm.
like how people talk to their body, how they relate to it, like, ugh, right? Like, why are you, this, have extra 5 pounds or aging or wrinkles or all of these different things, and then there's this, like, almost like the disconnect grows bigger. So between
Mhm.
not moving it and not being with it, not being connected with it, not being grounded in it, and judging it against the standards that are constantly changing, right? It's like a little bit of a moving target of, like, what is okay. How is it okay to look like Kendall Jenner or whoever, Kim Kardashian, whoever is, like, up there for us to look at. So all of that to say that movement is an absolute necessity for us, and it's the thing that we'll do the least.
Mhm. Oh, yeah. Think of so many people who just sit all day and that is their life because that's their work and they're
100%.
sitting at a computer or doing something where they're sitting and then they get in the car and they go home, and they're driving and they're sitting and then they get home and then they sit. I mean, it is um, it's paralyzing, I think, for people.
Mhm.
My husband actually was in a job for a desk job for 8 years. And he, realized after getting out of that how wrecked his body was from
Mhm.
sitting. And it wasn't
Yeah,
just the 8 years of that, it's all the schooling before that. So all the
sure.
schooling where you're sitting too, right?
Mhm.
And he's such a kinetic person. I mean, he has to move in
Mhm.
order to just feel right in the world.
Yeah.
And so for him, even as a person, because I think some people can, their energy is maybe a little bit more, we could call it like that kapha energy. They're
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
more settled and grounded in general. He you know, having had that experience could look back on it and go, wow, like you wouldn't imagine that sitting could ruin your body because it
Sitting and
seems
you
so
smoking.
it's yeah, it seems so natural, but it
Mhm.
isn't. It isn't at all. Like we are designed to be moving and walking and just being up and or squatting. I mean, all these different positions that people don't, get into very often.
Mhm.
So doing practices, I mean, even if it's getting into yoga or other types of practices can be great to just put yourself into these different types of positions that we aren't normally in every day, but that our organs need and that our
Mhm.
energetic meridians need and right our systems need to actually be loose and move and be open and free.
Mhm.
So you do, I mean, you studied the Vedas. Did you get into yoga too at the same time? Were you embodying that?
Yeah. So my ex-husband is a yoga teacher. He's an amazing yoga teacher. So I've been, practicing for many, many years, and yoga is amazing, and walking and running and biking and all of these physical activities are amazing, but what we get into with my clients a lot of is non-linear movement with your emotions, really, like connecting, so not only to exercise and to move in a physical way, which is absolutely also, like, absolutely important and valuable and needed and necessary, but this is a different type of movement that is guided by your actual emotion and feeling and intention, whatever it is that you are moving with and creating.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right. So one of the practices that we do is we just notice what is the most, like, predominant emotion that you feel throughout the day. every day. Your thoughts go back to this one thing, and it's just like this persistent little thing. And then we go underneath it and underneath it and underneath it. We find what that is, and you move with it. And you
Mm,
really get to know that piece of you that keeps coming back and saying, like, hey, 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 work with me, be with me, right? And it's amazing to be in a yoga practice and feel your body and like really be in the body. That's incredible and so necessary. And having that connection of emotion
mhm,
and body and movement and very like non-linear theatrical, almost like expressive way of movement.
mhm, mhm. Yes, right. It's like moving in all the planes,
Always
right?
exactly.
Rather than just like da-da-da and da-da-da. You're
Yeah,
like all
because even
in.
like in yoga, like we are telling our body what to do, right? So it's like head body. Like what if our body gets to decide for
Yeah.
us, like, that we're not in the head is not in the driver's seat, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's I experienced this, I grew up dancing and like, classical ballet and, the
Mhm,
very rigid kinds
mhm,
of dance. And it's very much, even though you are hardcore in your body, a lot of it has to do with the mind because
mhm.
and a lot, the energy is up.
Yeah.
Ballet is very up. You are always focused on that plane and not in this like down
Mhm,
here,
mhm,
So in
mhm.
college, I ended up taking an elective in African dance, and it was so hard for me to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
because I was so used to like being up here and in my head and in this energetic was going away from the ground and
Mhm,
always like leaping off the ground, and this was
mhm.
all about like getting in
And
touch
the hip.
with the earth and getting in touch with like how we ground into the earth. Yeah, so
Mhm,
much hips, so
uh-huh.
much like just like um pushing towards the ground, and it was so hard for me. I felt just extremely uncomfortable and super rigid. It took a little while for me to be able to loosen up into that and get into this state. um so I think these practices, which are so they should be innate to us, take practice to get back into, right, getting and not feeling like this automaton, which a lot of us we've been shaped into that, right,
Mhm.
in our
Yeah.
society, shaped into sitting still in the
Mhm,
seat, or always being in our heads. And that's what's appreciated and lauded, is that you're such a thinker, and you're so intellectual, right? And not, oh, you're so grounded. I mean, no one ever says that as a, well, I mean, in certain circles they do, but in general
exactly.
it's not.
But it's
Right.
not a it's not a common compliment. "Oh my god, you're so grounded."
Right. Right. You're so in your body. It's just like
Mhm,
it's not as appreciated. And
mhm, mhm,
so to get us into that place of where we are actually feeling into, and
mhm.
I, although I appreciate everything that goes on in the mind, it can't be the only place we live. So it's not that we're forgetting the mind, it's just that we're integrating it all, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Integrating
Yeah,
body, mind, spirit, like really living holistically rather than just in these like compartmentalized places.
100%. Yeah, because otherwise what we're doing is we're thinking one thing and saying another and expressing another and doing another, and it's all completely incoherent and incongruent,
Did you
right?
find that when you started getting into these practices for yourself that, oh, how I was acting and behaving potentially in my marriage relationship was not congruent with how I'm feeling or thinking, or that did you start to discover those incongruencies within your being?
1 second. No, I'm sorry, I'm checking out at 2. So sorry. Uh-huh, thank you. Oof. Can we scratch
Oh
that?
yeah, that'll be edited
Because I
out.
know that in Riverside, there's a way to edit it. So sorry about that.
No worries.
Housekeeping. Okay. So incongruency. Do you want to go back to where to your
Yeah, do
question?
you feel like there were, as you started going into this for yourself and you're doing these embodiment practices and that you are getting in touch with your body and yourself and your different states of being, did you start to notice these incongruencies between how you thought and how you felt, or how you behaved and how you thought, or, in there mixed, was it all mixed up and
Yeah.
as you explored it?
Yeah. And one thing that I really noticed is that, like, the way that I was trying to get my desires and my needs met was the complete opposite of the way to actually have them met,
Mm,
right? So that was like one thing that I noticed. But absolutely, like, just no, how do I say that? Not no filter, but there was no discernment.
yeah.
Like, I really did not have discernment. So, like, my husband would upset me, and in the same moment, I would like explode, or I would shut down, or there was a complete lack of actual, like, adequate response to stimulus. So, it would either be like one end of the spectrum or a completely other end of the spectrum.
Mhm.
Yes. And definitely, I was walking around thinking about like how messed up he was, like how, oh, he is laundry list of how awful, or you know how awful he was, which he wasn't. He was a human being trying his best. He was just like doing his completely clueless dance. I was doing my clueless dance, and we were like cluelessly dancing in front of each other, and zero self responsibility on my part. Like, okay, like, just anything that happened, anything that took place was his fault. It was always like something that he was messing up. And this inability to, because if I looked at myself, if I paused and I looked at myself, that would have enormous implications. Then I would find really like all of the fear, all of the pain, all of the like lack of self-worth, and all of the lack of knowledge and confidence, and million different things that I would have to actually be faced with. And I don't want to do that. Like, that did not sound like fun at all. So I just was like, you're bad, and it's your fault, and you suck, and this has nothing to do with me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Is it
definitely not looking at all of the different ways that I was showing up, and not having that awareness and that pause.
Mhm. It sounds like you've really explored that to just be even able to say that and recount that. I
Yeah.
already know the work you did in between, to get to that place to actually be able to talk about that and be
Hmm.
honest and vulnerable about it. Isn't it
Hmm.
interesting how blame is always tied to like shame? Right?
Of
You're just like
course.
blame out here, but really it's you feel so shameful yourself
Hmm.
or pointing that mirror out. I'm like, no, don't
Yeah.
look. I don't want to look here.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So what
that's a reason why, perhaps that's one of the reasons why we don't want to go inside in that way, and in go and embody and have that visceral kind of reclamation of self, because then all of the stuff rises to the surface, right?
right,
And
because
then
you have
you
to
have
claim all of it.
to look at it, and you have to be with
Yeah.
it. You have to decide what you want to do with it,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And you have to decide, like, okay, like, am I going to hate myself more, or am I going to accept all of this and
Hmm.
be gentle and loving and not judge it and just observe it and say, ah, how interesting, right?
Hmm.
Like, with real curiosity and with real, wow, like, so interesting that I had no clue about any of these things, that no one ever taught me or modeled
Yeah.
anything remotely healthy for me in this way. And it's both like my responsibility, and both that I was really, really clueless and really didn't have access to any other mode of behavior.
Yeah. It's so important to, remind ourselves of that, and for other people listening to hear that you yes, we are 100% responsible. Once you get to an adult age and you are not the subject, subjected to,
Mhm.
the neglect or abuse or
Yeah.
whatever from a family, you are 100% responsible for your condition, yourself, your life, how you feel, how you think, how you act, all of it. And yet, just like you said, at the same time, it doesn't mean that you need to beat yourself up over not doing life perfect, not doing relationships perfectly, because, there's a lot to learn. And the
Mhm.
more dysfunction we come from, there's a heck of a lot more to learn, right? From not having, like you said, the models, because
Mhm.
modeling is really exactly how we learn. We
Yeah.
learn from observing. We learn from, so whatever we're observing and whatever we are taking in, it's not like our parents are teaching us how to be in a relationship with other people. We're just watching it all and going, okay,
Right.
this is how you're in a relationship with other people. This is what love is. This is, what it means to be a spouse, whatever it is. And so all that modeling that we got is all you got
Mhm.
until you start to really open your eyes to
Yeah.
other ways and other models.
Yeah.
So did you have, as you were going through this process of your own healing, it sounds like, and your
Mhm.
own breaking down and getting deep, um, were you starting to attract these sort of new models for you to be able to follow and learn from?
Yeah, so I think that it's been my experience that when people start on the spiritual path, and when they start learning something new, or they start really diving deep into something, the first thing, like your first thought or your first relationship with is like, oh my God, like now I know everything. Now I can do my life perfectly, right? So a year of this, like studying and figuring it out. And I was like, okay, I got this. Like, I'm
Yeah.
Buddha. I got it. I am now, I have graduated from the school of life and I can, teach the masses and I could fix my marriage and I could just like show up at 100%. And it's like, I have all the tools now. Check. Right. So my ex-husband and I got back together because I was a master now.
Mm.
And I could really do it correctly this time because, I've studied like 300 hours worth of like Vedic lectures and went to workshops and like really went deep and like I knew now. And
Mhm.
I was very unpleasantly surprised to find out that it doesn't actually work like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, wait, no, still no, wait,
Wait,
but I did all the things,
I'm still in the lesson. Hold on.
I still yeah. Yes, and so I was like, "Okay, husband, like, these are the things that I now know, and I'm gonna come to you with, I have cultivated my divine feminine, and I'm gonna show up as her, and you are gonna meet me there because obviously, why wouldn't you?" And he was like, "No, I'm still gonna do the thing that I did before, and I'm gonna have my own story and projection and, my own process." And you're not going to be able to just like with your knowledge
Right.
your newfound knowledge like shift everything in a single moment. So I think that this is like the first part of the spiritual process is when you feel like, oh my God, I know everything, I can like fix everything and I'm Buddha. And then the second part is like, oh, I really don't know anything. I now have a little more tools. I have a little more knowledge, and I'm going to still come face to face with people that are going to have their own very particular set of traumas, wounding, desires, needs, perceptions about life, lack of compatibility or presence of compatibility, et cetera, tenfold. So I think I lost the thread of your question for a
Yeah,
second.
I don't even remember if I asked a question in particular, but this is great. I think it, what this, um, reminds me of the like the old adage of, the more you learn, the less you know.
Yeah.
It's like this
The more you
unfolding
learn, the less you
process,
know, and the
right?
more you know, you need to learn more, and you need
Yeah.
to, but experientially also, like that's the part
Yes.
about learning and having it applied.
Yes.
And
Yes, like
so,
the lesson could be, you know, 2 seconds of a verse, or hear something, blah, the lesson. It takes 1 minute to take that in, and then a
right,
lifetime to apply it.
to
Right.
integrate
And
it.
yeah.
100%. That's so true. That's so true. And I remember the question that you asked is if I started kind of attracting different kind of people once I was more aware of myself, to some degree more aware of myself, right? And no, like I attracted someone else who was amazing, also an amazing human being, a beautiful human being, but also, like I said, with his own set of wounds and issues and trauma. And our particular dynamic was also completely incompatible and challenging, and also amazing and loving and sweet and wonderful in so many ways. But I again was able to find out that all of my knowledge and all of my beautiful wisdom, newfound wisdom, was it's not always just, it's not enough to merge that gap very often, right? But at this point, I was at least very prepared to learn and to keep learning and to keep learning and to keep understanding more about myself and about other humans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That the integration process is vital, right? We have these awakenings, learnings, the what we think, we catch the wisdom and we think we get it, but until it has been fully experienced. And that's why I believe we get those gifts or those opportunities to test it all out again, right?
Mhm.
It's like,
Right.
okay, here's another partner. Let's
Mhm.
see, what you really learned. Like,
Let's
oh,
see what
here's
you really
another,
learned, Missy.
yeah, yeah. Or here's like another whatever frustrating thing that
Mhm.
happens regularly to you. Like here's
Mhm.
another opportunity for you to test this. Like, did you
Mhm.
really embody that learning? Has it been integrated? And uh, it is a real lifetime of all of that. And I think that that's something, again, I've gotten to the point now where I can laugh about that.
Oh, yeah.
Where
Yeah.
it's
That's
not
that's
just
it.
like,
That's the
why?
magic.
Why does this keep, not even the like, why does this keep happening to me, like from a victim stance, but like, why do I have to keep learning this thing over and over? Instead of being frustrated with that, it's like
Yeah,
the giddiness of,
hilarious.
oh yeah, like I okay, here it is. I recognize this. This is hilarious. Like totally thought I was, through
Mhm.
this, but apparently
Mhm.
not. And I'm gonna, sit with this. And I think that is the where you start to get into this rhythm of
Mhm.
we're
Mhm.
going to recognize things quicker,
Mhm.
be able
Exactly.
to enter them more easily, right? You're not fighting it as much. You just
Yes.
enter it
Yeah.
more seamlessly, and
Mhm.
then you can process it more quickly, and then hopefully that helps to like move it along on to the next like last set of lessons. And I have found that to be true. But then I get surprised too, just like you said, when there's something that is deep, deep that I didn't know about. Because we all have. It's just like this constant excavating of deep emotions and trauma responses and things that, we don't even know we have. We don't even know we feel. We're we're experiencing it. And it's like you said, affecting potentially our thoughts or our behaviors. We
Mhm.
just don't know it. And it's
Yeah.
like until you hit it,
Mhm.
as you're digging, you don't
Mhm.
even know it's there. And then you're like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? Like, and it's like coming out like, like some demon. And it's just, I think that's to be expected, that
Mhm.
we're going to continually get to new gold. It's new new discoveries. It's really new treasure to unearth. And I think it's not to be looked at, if we judge it as bad, like, oh, that's a bad quality or that's a bad thing, then we're never really going to meet it, want to
Mhm.
dance with it, like you said. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right, you're not going to want to take it as your partner and actually move through with it. You just want to keep it hidden
Yep,
away,
yep,
right?
yep. Yeah, and that's why it's the shadow, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to keep it hidden away, but we can. And when we bring it to the light, then it just has a lot less power over us and over our relationships, over our situations, and over what motivates us, right? Because
Hmm.
if it's our motivation to keep it hidden, we're gonna show up for life in a very different way than if our motivation is to be like, okay, let's bring everything to light. Let's notice everything, whatever my shadow is, and let's play with it.
Hmm.
One of my really beloved teachers, she says, name it, claim it, tame it, which I love. Like, okay, like you could name your shadow. You could say like, oh, like little Miss Entitled, or those, you remember those memes that were going around, Little Miss this or this or this?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do.
It's like I don't know, a cute little cartoon.
Little
So
cartoon
like,
thing now.
yeah. Or Little Miss Know It All, or Little Miss Always Right, or Little Miss like I Got This Under Control. We have
Mhm.
so many different parts of us
Yeah.
that want to run the show. And if you name it and then you say, okay, you're a part of me. You're just one
Mhm.
part of me. I have many different parts. And like, I understand that you want to be seen, and I understand your value. I understand why you're here. And let's play. Let's see how we can develop a relationship where you are not really in charge. You're not in charge because all of these different parts of you, they're not qualified to be in charge of the bigger picture, right? So
Right.
knowing what the different parts are, knowing what motivates them, knowing what the different shadow qualities that you possess are, it's such an incredible like power.
Yeah.
It's such an incredible reclamation of like the wholeness of you,
Mhm.
right? Because then you get to say like, oh, I see you, right? Not like, not this again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then you could pause and take a breath, and then you can move with it.
Mhm.
And then you could that's why we do all of these practices, so they become innate. So when that comes up, when you're like, where did this come from? I thought we were done with this, or like I had no idea that this was a thing even, right? Whatever it is, when you have practices, when you have ways when you have a framework, first and foremost, where you're like, okay, like, here's this, that's the assignment. Here's the way that I'm going to move with this, right? Like physically move with it, mentally, emotionally, my entire sensory system, cognitively, in every way. I'm going to move with this because I have a framework of how to, right? Um, and having the framework and having the practices, it's a lot less scary when something
Mhm.
comes up. Like you said, you laugh at it, right? Like you could laugh at it because it's not scary. It's not going to like derail your entire life because now you understand something really uncomfortable about yourself.
Yeah.
Now you get to say like, wow, how amazing. What a beautiful thing. One more piece to integrate. One more piece where it's not being like that tiny little motivation under the surface that's running you in a direction that you don't actually want to go in,
Mhm.
right? Because it's like you're walking away from where you're wanting to go because this part of you wants to like not be seen or not be loved or not be heartbroken or whatever those motivations are, right? So
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I see, thank you for protecting me from heartbreak. So important, so amazing. That way I don't go like randomly trusting people and running into new relationships every 5 minutes like we do when we were teenagers. Like, I get it. Thank you. Right.
Mhm.
And also, you are not qualified to run my life. And you're amazing and I appreciate you.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. It's just the recognizing and seeing, giving that part, that shadow, whatever we want to call it, subpersonality, all of those, giving them what they needed
Yeah.
at the time. And then saying, like, so appreciating and loving them, giving them what they need is that appreciation and love, and also the permission
Yeah.
to just go chill, go chill. Like, I got
Absolutely.
this. So
Yes.
when we
Yes.
say I,
And promising them that you'll be there for them, that you're
yeah,
not like dismissing them like, go away, that you're like,
no,
okay, you're here, I
no. Like, I
get it.
want you to be here, but
Mhm.
in your, the embodiment of the joy that you are, or the
Right. Right.
whatever else, that they were. Have you studied or practiced or partaken in
IFS.
IFS? Yeah,
Yeah.
I could tell with just
Yeah,
us
I'm
using this
definitely
language.
all the way IFS girl.
So incredible.
So incredible.
I love how you can actually go through the processing yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
it's wonderful if
absolutely.
you can find an IFS coach or therapist too, if you need that, but
Mhm.
the fact that you can do it on your own, like, I'm a super DIY, like,
Mhm.
self everything, like
Beautiful.
self-care, self-healing, self-love, self responsibility, and not because I don't believe we need other people and that I've got all the answers per se,
Mhm.
but I'm the only one who can give myself the answers that I need.
Of
It doesn't
course.
mean that other people don't have the answers, right? I believe that we all are our own masters, mentors, healers, teachers, guides, because the answer that we uniquely need can only come from us.
Yeah.
And
I
same,
agree. I think it's different. Like if you're going to a therapist or a coach or someone for support, like in seeking answers, not
yeah,
you, but I'm saying if someone is like, oh, I need a coach because I need an answer, like that's not the correct approach. I think we do need support, and I love getting
yes.
support, and I'm always in a coaching program or in a training of some sort. Like I receive a lot of support, and I really love it for several reasons. But one is that it really even you have a level of projection on yourself, right? Even you have a level of
Yes.
self-judgment. And when someone sees you like really authentically, very clearly, and has that very like clear vision of you, there's a really beautiful level of support that you can receive from that.
Mhm. Oh, completely. And reflection, right? We
Mhm.
can reflect for one another,
Right. Yeah.
and also just, someone who can support you through practices that you don't know yet and haven't
Yes.
learned yet, right? I mean,
Right.
yes, we are so meant to be with each other, guiding and supporting each other in those ways. But then it's like, the journey is in, okay, so we've gotten
Absolutely.
you to the doorway.
Yes.
Someone can, like, step you to the doorway with a practice or
Absolutely.
a knowledge set of knowledge or whatever, but you are the one that needs to step through and go, along wherever you need to find those answers and discover those parts and do the integration work. And
Absolutely. And that's why, we don't want to continuously rely on someone, continuously, like even with therapists, like you don't want to be in therapy for an indefinite amount of time. You want to really have an intention to work through whatever you're in therapy for, or with coaching, whatever that program, whatever that thing is that you want support with that particular thing, and then you walk away with that. I'm not a huge fan of the word empowerment, but I can't think of a better word right now, but you walk away with that empowerment, with that set of tools, with that framework, with more self-trust, with more ability to trust your intuition and discern also what's intuition and what's fear and all of these
yeah.
things. So then your initial commitment to yourself, even when you go into therapy and you say, okay, I am committing to myself because I want to work through this, your initial commitment to yourself doesn't end with the end of therapy or with the end of coaching. It begins there, right?
Hmm.
Because you're not reliant on this person, you're reliant on yourself. You're coming in to get a set of tools, and you're coming in to get support, and you're coming in to get clarity and whatever else, community often right now, because we do like a lot of group things, and I love that
Yes.
aspect of it as well. But of course, what you're really going for is, a jumping point, exactly like you said, a door that you need to walk through, and you need to keep going on your path and keep building on that path. And it's so amazing because we have that luxury, right? My
Hmm.
mom did not have that luxury.
Your mom
Uh,
grew
it
up
was
in
just a very
Ukraine?
different time. It was not, it wasn't like really that long ago that when you were in therapy, it was like something that was, frowned upon or weird, or like that meant there was something wrong with you, right? And now it's kind of the opposite
Yeah.
of that. So we have that luxury to really explore,
Hmm.
our inner landscape, to get that support, to continue with our practices. And it's amazing because then
Hmm.
we get to affect the 7 generations forth, that where I am the first person in my family tree that ever spoke this language, that ever considered these things, that ever sat down and was like, I want to do better in my relationship and I have no idea how to do a relationship right, or I want to be a more feminine being and not show as a completely masculine person on this planet because I am a woman and I want to be soft and I want to be nourishing and I don't want to, you know, be constantly like in Kali mode and like exploding and not having like a good relationship with my temper and with my um, emotions.
Hmm.
Right. So having that luxury, like
Yeah.
understanding what a luxury it is and what a choice it is that you're making for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your relationships, for your loved ones, and really for all the generations to come.
Hmm. Yeah. It is really a whole, it's a way of living that is, to some people, seems either too luxurious or too self-centered and
Mm,
self-motivated. But just like you said, it is the exact opposite. I mean, it is, when living this way, it is for the future generations. It's
mhm,
breaking generational trauma. It is, for, it's for the world, really, to get into a place of recognizing your wholeness and being in this aligned state of being and being connected to the divine through these practices and not being so clouded by all your bullshit. Like, that's great for everybody.
for
That
sure.
is
And it
right.
generations to come, and a ripple effect in the moment as well, because
Yeah.
your current relationships are affected. And if you can speak with your girlfriend in a different way and you can, hold space for her in a different way, you can give her healthy self-reflection and things like that. She's gonna go and do that for her girlfriend that you don't know, and et
Hmm.
cetera, et cetera. So that ripple effect is there. So it's a luxury that we get to choose this and that we have the access to it. But
Yeah.
I think it's a necessity that we walk that path.
Definitely for those called, is
Mhm,
certainly
exactly.
a
Right.
necessity. Like, if you are called to something, it doesn't even matter what it is, but whatever you are so called to, that,
Mhm,
that it is that lit up feeling that, I am miserable not doing that or doing anything else but that. It, whatever that thing is, your unique soul mission here is important to follow, because it is, and you will be given the signs of that you're not on the right path, with you're not fulfilling your mission. And the reason, or the how you'll know that, is your misery and your
mhm,
pain and your dissatisfaction and your frustration. It's like those things can be relieved by figuring out, why am I here?
mhm,
What am I doing here? What is
mm,
my purpose in this lifetime? I believe that we all have our purpose, our general purpose is to figure that out. And then we all
yes.
have these like unique missions.
Mhm,
I don't know if everybody's mission is to get to this fully healed
mhm,
place to where they're even able to pass along teachings and messages. It's maybe not their time for that. So
absolutely.
I spend less time now in this knowing, and I also think that knowing has come with maturity,
Yes,
that I'm not here to fix anybody. I'm not here to
of course.
change anybody's mind. I'm not
Yeah.
here to talk anyone down to the path. It's like, you want to come, let's go. This will be
Mhm.
fun.
Mhm.
But you don't want to come. I'm not here to force you to do that, because that's your own path. Yeah, that's your own internal mission. And if their mission is not calling them to that, then it maybe isn't their time, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe it's calling them to that 10 years from now. And 10
right.
years from now, the same person is gonna come to you and say, "Oh my god, like, I remember that in 2023, you were like, 'Hey, this.'" And I was like, "What? No." Now I'm like, "Oh my god, this." Totally, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
not, and that's fine too, and that's beautiful
Mhm.
too.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it is. It's acceptance of
Mhm.
all of this being truth, all of this
Mhm.
being beauty, all of this is goodness,
Mhm.
and instead of having this value judgment, like of this, oh, if you're not on this spiritual path, you're not living the right way. It's like, no, that's all of the ways of living are
Mhm.
the right way. It's just we are at different times and
Mhm.
different path rates of change and transformation, and
Mhm.
learning and understanding, and those ways of being. I could even look at myself, and I would have to say I was wrong and that I
Mhm.
wasn't living right. To say that looking at myself at 20 was
Mhm.
not right is
Mhm. Mhm.
saying that I am, is then getting into this place of a rejection of self. That's
Mhm.
a path. I can look at the whole thing and go, oh, wow, that was necessary. That was
Right.
necessary, right? To get here. So where someone might be as I point to them and look at them now is
Yeah,
necessary, right? For where
absolutely.
they're going. Do you
Absolutely. Yeah,
feel like
and
all your
upward
stages have been
looking up
necessary for you?
sorry? Say
Do
that
you
one more
feel like
time.
all your stages, like you have been necessary for you to be who
Absolutely,
Gina
of
sitting
course,
here right now? Yeah.
of course. Yeah, and I think that there's definitely a degree that we come to realizations, unfortunately, a lot of the times through that pain point, right? So mine was, why does my relationship suck? And who am I in it? That was my pain point, and that was my starting point of my journey. For a lot of people, it's going to be whatever it is for them. Um, but you could sometimes go through it just on intuition and decision and say, like, what else is out there? Like, I'm curious, like, not have to come to a pain point.
I totally agree with that. And I'm hoping that more people will choose that path rather than needing to be pushed onto the path through being at that rock bottom.
Right,
Like,
right.
or it's more of like rolling onto the
Yeah.
path. You're like dragging yourself onto the path from
Right.
that
Okay.
rock.
Fine, I'm on the path. Yeah, just really exactly rolled my
Yeah. Like,
saw that picture when you said that. That's really funny. I think there's a concept called Satori and Kensho. Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
Satori is that way of coming into a big realization or coming onto your life path through enlightenment, through that moment of like lightness and expansion. And Kensho is like that pain and harsh, oh my God, like I can't do this way anymore. What's another way? But you've come to this like exactly rolling on this road, like someone kicks you on it and you're like on it because you're just like laying there. So I think that Satori is that more expansive, decision like, intention like way of coming onto your path. And I think it's a little more rare. It's been my experience that it's a little more rare.
Hmm.
Um, I was just at a talk with Simon Sinek. Are you familiar
I
with him?
do.
Yeah. He's
Yeah.
amazing. He is just, wow, like mind-blowing, incredible public speaker, and just the level of his eloquence and intelligence and authenticity. So, I could talk about that for a long time. But one of the things that he took questions from the audience afterwards, and someone said, like, I noticed that a lot of uh, people's amazing stories. He was interviewing Molly from Molly's Game, the woman that she was a madam, and she was FBI asked her for her client list, and she didn't give up her client list and went to jail for a really long time. And she didn't have really a very close relationship with her clients. She just chose integrity. So he was with her and he was interviewing her, and she was talking about her rock bottom moments, and he was talking about his, and they were talking about other people's and his friends, etc. And someone said, like, what, it just seems that we have to hit rock bottom in order to rise. And like, has that been your experience?
Mhm.
And he said, yeah, I think that there is definitely a pivotal moment. It might be rock bottom for you, it might be like a death of someone else, a sickness of a family member, something else, but there is definitely like that really harsh moment.
Yeah.
And that is more often than not our catalyst for transformation.
Mhm.
And how amazing is it that someone just chooses transformation?
Mm.
That they just decide, that they say, "You know what? I'm not going to wait until this really cataclystic event.
Mhm.
I'm just going to choose transformation."
Mhm. Yeah.
So that is such an incredible, like, hopeful thing that as I'm saying this, I'm thinking about it, that I am the first person in my generation that has these types of conversations or thoughts or explorations. And maybe the next person in our like in my generation, is going to just decide and not come from this pain point place, right? And just say,
Yeah.
like, I think I'm 24. I think it's time for my transformation to begin now.
Exactly. Having an actual rite of passage that
Natural
is natural.
vision,
Yes.
intention, I'm going to decide and I'm going to intend for this to be
Mhm.
so.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're our culture obviously isn't set up that way of
Yeah.
where it's about inner work. It's about outer work and externalities, right? Completely. And if inner work was the goal,
Yeah.
is inner transformation what was the goal of life, then
Mhm.
yet many more people would set out on that. But I would say that when you have your initial, you know, rock bottom moment that creates a change and an initial transformation or a, an awakening and an opening to the path, that once you get to certain plateaus or certain, stops on the path of where, like you had said, you think you learned it all, and you're in this great place. It does require it, or I guess we are in that satori place at that point because we're
Yeah.
choosing to continue, choosing to go. It's not like you have to continue hitting all these rock bottoms, right?
Yeah.
So as you get onto it and it starts to feel amazing and you feel the benefits and you're like, oh, this is life.
Yeah.
This is actually life, not all that other bullshit. Like this is living, then we are really consciously choosing to
Mhm.
continue the
True. Very, very
transformation,
good
right?
point. Yes, I love that. I love that frame. I love that perspective. I like how you phrase that.
Yeah. Well, how can people connect to you, Gina, and learn more about you? And because I know you also have a product-based company, which
Mhm. Thank
beautiful
you.
products for transformation. So, how can people connect to that and learn more
Mhm.
about you?
So I'm Gina Moon on Instagram. And it's ginamoon.co is my website, because ginamoon.com was taken. There's another Gina Moon somewhere out there. Um,
Not the Gina Moon, though.
yeah, but you can connect with me on Instagram. You can connect with me on my website. You can email me. You can DM me. I love connecting to people. That's my biggest joy in life, is connection, for sure, by far.
Beautiful. I'll put all the links in the show notes. Is there anything you want to leave people with? Any thoughts or feelings or last words?
Yeah, I just really loved our conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. And I can't wait to listen to it. I'm excited. And yeah, like coming back to the body, whatever that means. Like if there's anything that you can do, one thing today to connect your emotional and physical body, to think if there was like something lingering, something pestering you, some thought, some little issue that just, you can't solve it in your head. And if you can just go and dance in your living room, like put your favorite song on and just set the intention to move that emotion or that feeling or that lingering yuck through your body and see what comes out. Journal after and see what comes through you. It's such an incredible practice and it's free. And you can do it anytime, anywhere. You don't need any particular set of parameters. And it's yours. Like, and integrating that into your life, it really, little by little, changes how you show up for life, which is huge.
Mm. I'm gonna go crank some music and move my body.
And
Thank you
there are
so
days
much.
that I forget to do it as well. There are days that I'm like, oh, wait, I have this practice. I need to do my own practice that I teach, that I preach, that I love, that I know works every time, right? So
Well, let's go do it. Let's go crank our
let's go
music,
do
go
it.
move
Crank
our
out the music
bodies.
and let's do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
pleasure, pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Have a beautiful day.